News breaking that we are seeing Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra to be named as the new RBI Governor. And we all know that Dr. Shaktikanta Das has his tenure getting over on 10th of December, and now we were all looking for waiting for the new name. So Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra will be the new RBI Governor. So this is the breaking right now, and we'll be getting in more details, also connecting with a few market guests to figure out in terms of what will be the new regime under Sanjay Malhotra. But let also give you... All right, so we have our reporter, Prakash Priyadarshi, to give us more details on this. Prakash, what are the details on the new name of RBI chief?
Yeah, it's a very surprising name, and it's a big development coming in. Government has appointed Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra as a new RBI Governor. It's a big development coming in. As you are aware, that the Shaktikanta Das term is going to end on December 10, and before that, finally, the government has issued a formal notification. Remember, Sanjay Malhotra is a revenue secretary at this point of time. He is handling GST and all these big development for the government when it comes to taxes. And now he'll be in the helm of RBI governor. Before that, he was chairman IEC. He has good experience when it comes to corporates and the government affairs as well. So it's a big development coming in. It's a surprise element as well, as we were not expecting. He is in the fray. But it's a surprise element, and as you are aware that this government is known for its unusual decisions. And this time again, Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra comes as a surprise element, and he will be in the helm of RBI Governor. So it's a big development. It has now come out with the formal notification. Back to you.
Sure. All right. So I'm also joined by Madan Sadnavis. Let's get his take and first comment on this. So thank you so much for joining us today. Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra to be appointed as RBI Governor for the period of 3 years. Sir, how do you your take on the name?
No, I think this was the choice which the government has made, I think, was on probably something on expected lines coming from the ministry itself. And I think the task actually for the RBI governor will be more on to ensure there's continuity, both in terms of whatever happens on the monetary side as well as on the regulation side.
As a revenue secretary, what, according to you, or what attributes would you like to mention as far as Sanjay Malhotra's tenure is concerned, and him having the rapport with corporates, or maybe the kind of mindset that's needed to take the economy ahead?
So actually, we see the mindset of the new governor who has been announced, Mr. Malhotra, and that of Mr. Das, who is currently serving as the governor. It's almost so similar, coming from the Ministry of Finance. So, you're able to understand everything on the fiscal side as well as on the monetary side. And as you've also mentioned, in terms when you're in the government, you also have a very close working relationship with the corporates. That is with India INC. So that will be one of the major constituencies. So I think this makes the overall issue of not just coordination, but also understanding the issues on the fiscal, monetary, as well as on the practical side. That's on the real economy side. I think you get a very good understanding of that, which makes operations of the central bank that much easier. So you don't have to really get into the groove or anything of that sort. It's something which he has already been observing very closely, sitting in the finance ministry. So now there can be a seamless kind of a transition, both for the Reserve Bank of India as well as for Mr. Malhotra.
Then, if I have to ask you about his professional personality, how do you think he is? Is he a taskmaster? Is he a tough decision maker? What would you like to call him as?
So I wouldn't know about him personally, but definitely in terms of the way in which he came across when he was in the ministry at the time of the budget formulation, budget presentation. I think a person who is very, very thorough, knows the job very well, knows inside out about what's happening in the Indian economy. I think that is most important. Very good understanding, because we've seen him in various press conferences post the budget, and also the fact that he's able to balance what's happening on the fiscal side with what is happening on the monetary side. But I think that's the job of both the governor of the RBI as well as anybody in the ministry, any of the secretaries, that both these two things have to be balanced, for which you require a very thorough understanding. So I think that's the major advantage, or the kind of the wealth of knowledge which he brings, knowledge and experience which he brings to the table.
Talking about the trajectory ahead, what, according to you, could be his initial challenges to deal with?
I think there are two things we should keep in mind. One thing is in terms of maintaining the integrity of the financial system. I think this has been continuously the task of the RBI for the last 10 years or so. So you have to make sure that any kind of policy which is announced on the banking front is proactive. You need to be anticipating what could possibly go wrong to make sure that you have the appropriate policies in place. So I think that is the primary function from the point of view of a central bank. The second thing for the governor will be, of course, how do you actually make sure that you're able to make sure that there's a free flow of funds to the productive sectors. This means this will be covering not just the monetary policy, but also everything that goes along with it. Because you have to make sure that liquidity is available to the banking system, which necessarily again means you'll have to have a good control over what happens on the forex side, any of the decisions which are taken in terms of on the fiscal side, because all these things will finally affect the availability of liquidity in the system, because that is what's required to propel growth in future.
Thank you so much for talking to us today and giving us your time. Thank you. Also, I'm connected with MK Global lead economist Madhvi Arora. Madhvi, hi, good evening and welcome to the show. Your comment on the name, Sanjay Malhotra.
Very interesting choice. So we were expecting, some government bureaucrat to probably fill the position, and pretty much in line on those thought process. And I think everybody in the market is looking for continuity, from the RBI stance. Obviously, he has a difficult task to manage, because now we're getting into a stage where the Indian economy is pretty much getting in a stagflationary stage, where growth is sort of falling or looking to remain weak, while inflation is still pretty much, hovering close to around 5% plus mark. And at the same time, the global winds are changing. We no longer are expecting, policymakers in the West, led by the US Fed, cut rates aggressively, which could give them enough window to actually act to support domestic growth. So I think external factors are very different from what they were 6 months ago or 1 year ago. So clearly he's entering the system with new risks and new, especially FX-led risk, which probably he'll have to manage as he gets on board.
I'm also joined by Carnelian Asset Management founder Vikas Khemani. Vikas, good evening and welcome to the show. What is going to be your take on the name?
I think, I'm sure a lot of diligence has gone behind selecting this name, and fact that he comes from a very good background, same IS cadre, and part of the, he's been revenue secretary. So I'm sure, he understands this, and we have had many such instances. Mr. Das also comes from a similar background. So I have no doubt. I'm sure, he will also do a great job, and we look forward to see how his thought process are. But in general, I'm kind of neutral to positive about them.
All right, let's also get connected with Elara Capital economist and senior vice president Garima Kapoor. Garima, hi, good evening and welcome to the show. All right, let's list out the few challenges in the initial stages that the new RBI governor, whose name has been announced, might experience or will have to go through.
See, broadly speaking, one, of course, there is a continuity from the fact that he understands the dynamics of the economy. He comes from the finance ministry, and like the former governor, Das probably understands the challenges of maintaining the dual mandate in terms of maintaining inflation such that it does not compromise growth. The immediate challenge, in my view, would be a completely new team. So Dr. Michael Patra is basically replacement news, or I should say advertisement is already out. So his deputy, who will probably be guiding him in the monetary policy conduct, will be new, number one. Number two, the MPC members are also formalized new. And so that, I think, will mean that except for Dr. Rajiv Ranjan, who will be the old hat in the MPC, all the members would be new. Now, while this will not specifically be a challenge, what this could do is it could change the face or completely change the way MPC is reviewing the current mandate. Remember, the latest policy by the vote of 4:2 had voted for a pause, which is earlier 4:1. So I think the inclination towards managing economy's challenges in terms of slowdown could be slightly higher than that of managing inflation, which currently has purely been driven by food, and core inflation has been completely within its control, largely reflecting that probably economy is operating below potential. Also, another good point about the Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra is also that he's been very dynamic as a person. So he has often, as a Revenue Secretary, given a view that it's important to keep the interests of the economy ahead of the interests of the revenue in that the department needs to earn. So there is a fair bit of dynamism in him as well. But I think broadly, finance ministry officials, the history of this country has indicated that IS officers or those belonging to IS cadre have done relatively better job at in the helm of RBI than probably lateral placements that we have had in the past.
A quick sneak peek on the Secretary's profile. 1990 batch IAS officer of Rajasthan cadre, completed B.Tech from IT Kanpur in 1989, earned a master's in public policy from Princeton, previously served as Secretary in Department of Financial Services, Chairman and Managing Director of REC Limited in November 2020, and 30 years experience in power, finance, taxation and IT. I'm also joined by my colleague Ankur Mishra. Ankur, quite an impressive profile and a shocker.
Yes, I would not say shocker, but definitely a surprise, not only for stakeholders, but for market too, because there were several names in contention for being the potential candidate of Reserve Bank of India Governor. And finally, the government has gone for current Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra. Few of the sources were, of course, contemplating that the current Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikanta Das may get an extension. In fact, there were contemplations that whether or not he can be the longest serving Reserve Bank of India Governor. And with the time that the announcement was delayed, remember, the term of the current Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikanta Das is going to end on December 10, that is tomorrow itself, and the announcement has come just a day before. So there were several kind of contemplations which were there in market, and finally government has gone with Sanjay Malhotra. You would say that there were other contenders too, and we will not take the names who all were there, but all kind of scenarios were contemplated by the market, all kind of scenarios were discussed among the various circles, not only in North Block but in Reserve Bank of India as well. And now finally this has come to an end with the announcement of Sanjay Malhotra as Reserve Bank of India Governor, who will serve for next 3 years as next Governor. Now the important issues will be, of course, the economy. You would remember the last quarter, which has been just 5.4%, and we need to also find out the answer whether or not that has not gone well with the government. You would have seen the statements which is coming from cabinet ministers who were advocating for cutting the rates by Reserve Bank of India, and why it was not done. But in the current policy which was announced on last Friday, the governor made it clear that 4:2 the vote was in favor of status quo, although there was CRR cut which was announced by Reserve Bank of India. Let's discuss this in detail with our guests too, and we continue to have with us esteemed panel. First, I would want to come to you, Garima, once again, understanding whether or not is GDP a factor, you think?
See, broadly, an inflation targeting regime that India has adopted, GDP is not a factor. But with the recent trend that we have seen in the Q2 FY24, that not only surprised the consensus estimates, but also RBI's own estimates by a margin of 100 to 120 basis points, I would think that probably it is time to lean the focus towards growth for sure. Because one thing is for sure that the headline food prices which have been rising because of idiosyncratic factors. The onion output or supply is not going to improve until end of December, so we will not see inflation print coming down materially or at least meaningfully until January. Now, whereas core has been fairly well behaved, that partly explains the economy might be operating at sub-potential or below potential capacity. And hence, I think there is a merit in the current juncture to be considering these factors and probably creating a space for Fed policy. The CRR cut in the previous policy, in my view, has already created a room, probably given a way forward to a 25 basis point repo rate cut in the upcoming Fed policy.
One of the things which was noticeable in the current policy was leaning towards the growth. You would have seen at least 2 to 3 times Reserve Bank of India governor maintained, while maintaining the price stability, targeting of inflation is priority, but also balancing the growth. In fact, the press conference which happened at 12 o'clock, he emphasized one of the important points, that the balance between inflation and growth needs to be maintained. Although MPC is mandated to target the inflation, I want to come to you, Vikas. How do you see the appointment of Sanjay Malhotra vis-a-vis the perception of market, vis-a-vis the scenario where the wide expectation was that the current RBI governor terms or tenure may be extended, but that has not happened? Okay, same question for you, Madhvi, while we will connect once again to Vikas. Madhvi, how do you view this scenario where the current Reserve Bank of India governor has not got an extension, government has not gone with continuity, at least with him. So how should market perceive it?
See, there was already expectation in the market that there could be a change. There was a reasonably high probability of that happening. So I think let's not discuss something which is not hasn't happened. I think market is going to be forward-looking in terms of the new person, rather than discussing as to what would have happened had this governor had continued. So I think it makes no sense to really spill on something which has not happened. Let's move forward. There's a new governor, and let's focus on his priorities, which Garima already had beautifully laid out. So I think he is in a situation where he's not going to enjoy the same comfort that the previous governor had enjoyed last year, wherein the power dynamics globally were very comfortable. You were looking at policymakers in the West cutting policy rates. The market dynamics were very comfortable in terms of risk, risk-taking abilities of the global market. I think sitting today, not only do we have a stagflationary problem, trade-offs are very high domestically, but even externally they are looking at a very different global dynamic, which doesn't give them the leeway to cut as much as probably we would have liked. So I think the fact that they would have to sort of offer a decent risk premium ahead to global markets to be investing in India gives them very limited window to cut rates and probably manage effects in a very different way than the past policymakers had done. So I think the challenges are very different. And as she mentioned, we are also looking at a very new MPC. So a new MPC both in terms of the construct of the new members, plus the problems also are going to be very different from what they were 6 months ago.
Right, definitely the challenges are quite evolving, and the new RBI governor needs to take care of that. Even in the current policy, the vote for status quo was 4:2, which is anybody's guess that external members would have voted for a change, while the incumbent RBI members have voted in favor of keeping status quo. Garima, one thing I want to understand with this change, now let me come straight to the point. In February policy, are there more chances that after a change of stance, which has already happened, the rate cut scenario hope will increase?
Governor continued to be Shaktikant Das also. There was already a chance of a rate cut in February because the CRR cut was basically done to manage external risks and manage the rupee more than anything else, because the degrees of freedom that the MPC and the RBI enjoyed were much lower in the backdrop of external sector. So I would say the rate cut stance, the chances, I will not say increase or decrease. There would have been a rate cut irrespective. And even if Governor Das would have continued being the governor, I would have still called out for a rate cut in February.
Right. One more thing I want to understand from you, Madhvi. Apart from rate cut expectations, CRR is already been reduced by 50 basis point. How do you see the liquidity scenario, which has already been taken care by the incumbent, the current governor, for banks, for stakeholders? How will these stakeholders view the new appointment of RBI Governor, Mr. Sanjay Malhotra? How will the more than market, the stakeholders will perceive it?
Too early to take a call on that front, whether, how his appointment would really change the workflow or the reaction function of the Reserve Bank. What I can say is that probably you're going to look at the Reserve Bank, which if not able to cut rates massively, would at least be able to sort of give some kind of comfort to the banks in terms of regulatory framework, which I think would be the next leg of stealth easing that we may see if RBI is unable to cut in a meaningful fashion in the next 1 year.
Also have Prakash Priyadarshi, who has got the news of being the next RBI governor, meaning Sanjay Malhotra's appointment as RBI governor. He was first one to get for the viewers of ET Now. Let's get connected to Prakash Priyadarshi. Prakash, what prompted government to appoint Sanjay Malhotra as RBI governor? That is the question everybody is asking.
See, what sources are confirming that the 8 names have been sent to the PMO by the finance minister, and Sanjay Malhotra name was one of them. However, the interview lasted for a month, and all these candidates have been thoroughly gone through check and balance. The government has clear vision that whomever they are appointing as the RBI governor should have vast experience about the policy, corporate affairs, etc. And Sanjay Malhotra is a fit candidate. Sources are confirming that given the fact that he has been in the helm of various affairs in the states, along with that, he has been chairman of REC. He is handling revenue portfolio in the Ministry of Finance, and you have seen that the indirect taxes has touched a record high when it comes to GST collection during his tenure. Along with that, direct taxes, we have seen a lot of development in direct taxes, ease of doing business, the process that has been made simpler for the taxpayers and the businesses as well. So the credit given to, of course, Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra. So given these facts and taking all these into account, the government must have found a better candidate in him, and he has now been appointed as the RBI governor. So it's a big development coming in. We are also trying to get why Shaktikanta Das term has not been extended. So these are the regular things, and we also try to get more details. We try to dig in more information about this going forward. Yes, back to you.
Definitely. We also have our guests with us. I would like to come to you, Mr. Madan Savnavis. You have been part of the meetings which government regularly holds regarding economic scenario, how the economy is doing. And now the announcement has been made that Sanjay Malhotra is going to be next RBI governor. I want to understand that what kind of challenges he will face, because the economy is not as hunky-dory as you would have seen, let's say, 2 quarters back. The current numbers are, of course, alarming for GDP. However, Governor did give a caveat that whatever the high-frequency indicators are there, they are signaling a recovery. What will be the focus of new governor according to you?
So according to me, there would be 2 major objectives for the governor, of RBI. It is to ensure that integrity of this is maintained at all times. And it's to do prudential regulation. Financial system 10 years have gone through different phases it has emerged very strong today. So that is, I think, the primary goal, to ensure that everything functions in an orderly manner. So therefore, I would tend to believe that whatever kind of regulatory changes we've been seeing in the last 1 or 2 years is something which will continue, and the Reserve Bank will continue to be proactive. The second part, as you mentioned, is that there are these kind of different kind of views which we have about how the economy is performing. I would tend to believe that we are still fairly well placed. Definitely, given the fact that we are targeting to become a 5 trillion economy, 10 trillion economy, 15 trillion economy, so on and so forth, it would also mean that you will have to ensure that there is a free flow of funds to the productive sectors. So this means that there'll be a lot of coordination, a lot of work which has to be done to ensure that the monetary policy, the exchange rate policy, the overall liquidity management is aligned with the broader goal of making sure that funds are available in a non-inhibitive manner to the productive sectors. That is to make sure that we're able to target growth. So growth dynamic comes from monetary policy. I think that will be more on the operational side. And purely on the banking side, whatever happens to the economy, we have to make sure that the system is working perfectly and there are no bubbles which are building up, and the system remains strong for all times.
I want to also come to you, Madhvi, for another response, which is the global challenges which are still persisting. There is no clear-cut scenario which is emerging globally, and different central banks have adopted different strategy, in fact, to maintain the economy. In this context, I want to understand what kind of approach you think Sanjay Malhotra may have to take, and will he get an advantage coming directly from North Block? While Prakash, you also stay, I will discuss with you regarding the coordination which North Block and the Mint Street needs to do. First, I would want to come to you, Madhvi.
Yeah, hi. So as I mentioned earlier, that the window and timing of massive rate cuts is pretty tricky, and probably even small for the Reserve Bank, irrespective whoever takes on the baton now. Because, if you look at the fluid global dynamics that have played out in the last 4-5 months specifically, we are in a situation where probably US Fed may deliver a shallow cycle, amid the re-emergence of the risk of higher for longer scenario. You are probably looking at a situation where there will be likelihood of rising global term premia, which is likely going to keep global yields higher, or probably even drive them further higher. And you could also be seeing much greater macro volatility led by persistent inflation, probably generally large fiscal deficit around the world, and much higher debt issuances in general. All of that would again feed into higher yields. That sort of in all restrains the flexibility of emerging market central banks to solely focus on the domestic dynamics. As I was saying, that things are very different from what they were, mid of last year, when not only the risk appetite globally was pretty comfortable, but also the policymakers in the West started to cut rates, and there were big bets beginning of the year which were being taken on, how deep can Fed go, which obviously doesn't seem to be the case at this point in time. In fact, markets are now talking about a slight case of a rate hike by the US as well. So I think the global dynamics are very different from what they were some time back, and policymakers are obviously aware of the dynamics which are evolving on a regular basis. That's why it's very difficult to really take a 100% call on the Fed cut as well. I mean, 2 months ago we all were looking at a December cut, which obviously didn't turn out to be the case. So I think the kind of macro volatility and the fluidity in the global market essentially implies that every policy becomes a live policy, and in every policy will have a very different trade-off from what it was, say, 2 months ago or 3 months ago. So I think he's in for a difficult time as far as the global dynamics are concerned. And as I mentioned, domestically also the trade-off of policy making is only sort of getting more acute.
Let's go across to Prakash once again, because he is someone who tracks North Block very closely. He has been watching Sanjay Malhotra very closely in past many years. I want to get a reporter sense here. How do you see Sanjay Malhotra as a person now managing Reserve Bank of India, with your experience of the interactions which you would have had with him, and also regarding the North Block and Mint Street coordination?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and of course, given the fact that he has been in the helm of various affairs in the state government, along with that, he had already served as a chairman of REC, so he has good experience when it comes to public finance and other administrative activities. Along with that, he has also handled quite successfully when it comes to complex GST structure and the state and center and the state tax balance. Along with that, he has already introduced a lot of new ideas when it comes to meet the fiscal gap between state and the center finances. Along with that, the 50-year bond where the state governments are getting interest-free loan is something which was a brainchild idea by Mr. Sanjay Malhotra. So it's a good choice, I would say, given the fact that he is a good administrator and he'll also work as a bridge between RBI and the government, given the fact that his administrative skill, his experience at the North Block, and of course, he knows very clearly what government wants at this point of time, where the inflation is a challenge, along with that the global...
Prakash, thank you so much for getting all those details of Sanjay Malhotra, and more than that, getting the news for our viewers. It's time to wrap up the show. I want to thank all my guests, Madhvi, Madan. Thank you so much for joining at this hour. It's a time for wrap at this hour, but news and updates, and particularly on new Reserve Bank of India Governor's appointment, will continue on ET Now.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.